hope everybody's happy with that. And I'm going to hand over to Rachel.
Super, thank you. Um, right, can I be a real pain and just ask? I can hear there's some background noise somewhere. It sounds like a TV or something. So can I just get anybody to double check that their microphone is off if there is background noise? Um, Brilliant. Okay, so hi everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I'm going to do my best to chat to you about perhaps the slightly drier aspect of NPMS Plus and the plant recording in the children's, because we're talking about data entry and the website. But with that disclaimer out of the way, of course, it's arguably one of the most important parts because, of course, we want to know what it is that you are out and you're recording. So it's super duper important that we make sure that you chaps are happy and comfortable with entering the data at the end of the day. So just for my benefit, because I'm new to a lot of you chaps and I don't recognise many names, are you happy to just pop in the chat whether it's your first year doing this, whether you've done this before, whether that be NPMS surveys in the Chilterns, or even perhaps NPMS survey and you've also entered data previously. That would be super helpful just to know. From what I gather, we've got quite a range of folk this evening, from people completely starting afresh with the scheme, and some that have done this for a couple of years. But do you know what? Oh, this will be our third year. There we go. Done one last year. Brilliant. So hopefully this won't be too repetitive, but Dave and I were just saying it can be really helpful, can't it? At the start of the season, when you haven't been doing this for a little while, to have a little bit of a refresh about how to enter the data, and you will see that there are some differences. Oh, look, you're all super experienced. Ace. That's brilliant. And new to this, third year. Oh, real mix. That's fine. As I say, those of you that have done this previously and that have entered data, you'll see that there are um, some slight differences. I'm not sure how much David has previously mentioned that how you enter your data in the Chilterns has transferred slightly over to NPMS Plus, rather than where it was previously. Can you all see that screen? Hopefully you can. Nobody's shouting out. I'm going to assume that you can, so I'm going to go
I
ahead
can
and
see
crack
it.
on. Perfect. Ace. So yeah, so today we're chatting about using NPMS Plus. Um, so called because it's sort of an offshoot of the National Plant Monitoring Scheme. So the core scheme, which has randomly designated squares all over the countryside. The Chilterns Tracking the Impact project has really been a model project for us, really, over the last 5-6 years. How we can, or how you chaps are adopting NPMS survey methodology, but at a high resolution. So focusing on a core area and or a smaller landscape scale area, and having a larger number of squares within that boundary than would otherwise be there. So, of course, it started off, well, anybody here, the original Tracking the Impact gang will know it started with the 50 original survey squares, and it now extends over the River Chess and the smarter water catchment area. So I'm not sure actually. David, you'll probably tell us how many squares we currently have surveyed within this area using NPMS survey methodology, but we're really looking forward to continuing to get data from those folk that are already engaged and already collecting data, because of course it is a long-term monitoring scheme, and the team are interested in changes and trends over time. But we're also really looking forward to getting data from newly recorded squares. Oh, about 35 NPMS surveys. That's ace. So in this session this evening, we're going to be finishing up at about 8 o'clock, because I know it can get quite hard work staring at a screen of an evening, but it's going to be really useful, I think, just to go through getting started. So thinking about website orientation, sort of getting to find your way around the plant portal, which we use to enter the data. And we'll be looking at sort of the different functionality in the data entry processes to really make the most of your experience. And as I've said, make sure that your super valuable data is collected and reaches the project to be analysed. We want you to, we don't want this to become a chore. We want you to feel confident and happy doing this. We want to make sure that you know how to create your plots, how to enter data, how to do so at different survey levels. And I will also just flag up any additional resources. But of course, we also want you chaps to know that, of course, you can get in touch with David, myself at any point rather than you sort of hitting your head against a wall somewhere by yourself. Do get in touch. Usually it's something that we've come across, individually, and we could say, oh, I know exactly what you're describing there. We can give you a hand. So yes, do feel like, when you're entering your data, if you come up against any difficulty at all, do get in touch. So as I've kind of described, the NPMS Plus helps organisations to set up long-term plant and habitat monitoring to suit their own requirements. So they use the existing methodology from the core NPMS, and then that sort of little plus sign means that we're providing a framework for habitat and plant monitoring at that local level. Basically, so that the methodology is robust, it's repeatable, it has the 3ID levels, but most importantly, because it's that NPMS Plus, it's not restricted to the 1 kilometre square locations of the core scheme, and it allows for self-selection by the project. So tracking the impact is one such project that's using NPMS Plus, but we've got a number. We've got Bristol City Council, we have Warwickshire Wildlife Trust. There's a few different organisations actually. We use it for some projects within plant life. So there are a number of areas and projects popping up across the country that are using this methodology at this local scale. So you can see here the home page to the plant portal. For all of you that have previously said that you've surveyed with us before, you'll be familiar with the plant portal. This is a data capture portal that was set up and designed by the UK Centre for Ecology and Hydrology. It essentially is a place where folk can go to capture their plant quadrat data, whether they're using it in standard mode, which means they're sort of designing their own survey methodology, or in the NPMS Plus mode, which means that they are using NPMS survey methodology. So for anybody looking to find out more about NPMS Plus, they can click on that sort of link down the bottom that says take me to NPMS Plus, and that gives a little bit more information about anybody that's hoping to set a project using that methodology. It's a really useful tool for folk because this is a free data repository. It means that people can actually have some way to capture their data, to store it and download it and whatnot. So yes, tracking the impact is now using NPMS Plus. Go ahead, David.
It's me, Colin, Rachel. Sorry
Oh,
to
Colin,
interrupt you.
sorry.
I've logged into NPMS in the same way as I used to do.
Yeah.
When I go to the project, it's showing me. Let me show what I've got. Um, Resources and training. If I click on that, I get
Yeah.
a choice there of NPMS Plus or Standard. It doesn't seem to
Mm-hmm.
be the screen that you're showing me now. Is it the same thing or the same way that I should be accessing the?
Yep. Yep. So when you log in, you'll see exactly what you can see there. You can put take me to NPMS Plus. I will admit that literally just tells you about NPMS Plus. You won't necessarily see your data or be able to enter data that way. But yes, that's exactly how it looks. And I can walk us through how you find your project in a mo.
But it's the same way of as I used to log on before. I just
Yep.
carry on. Same
Yep.
way. Okay.
Log in exactly as you did before. And hopefully, actually, here we go. It's on the next slide, which is always handy. You can navigate everywhere from the menu bar at the top, but of course you will be able to do it until you have logged in. So I believe, and David will correct me if I'm wrong, that everybody that was previously allocated to tracking the impact is on Plant Portal are all still and are now existing members of the Tracking the Impact NPMS Plus
That's right. That's right. They've been
project.
transferred over by Andy.
That's right.
Yeah.
So you'll log in exactly as you did before, same email address, same password, same everything. and your account, as it were, is associated with the Tracking the Impact project, just as it was before. The main difference being, oh, hang on, I'm not going to go ahead of myself. So just for anybody, just because I'm aware that a few people popped in the chat that they're completely new. I'm not sure if everybody's already created an account yet. If not, you just head into logging in, and you let it know if you're creating a new account. There's a little reminder at the bottom there to get in touch with David, because if you are creating an account newly, you will need to be assigned to a certain project. So I think, David, you're manning that side of things, if I'm right. But the main thing to do is to create an account, get in touch with David, and he will assign you to the Tracking the Impact project. To create an account, as I've just said to Colin, you just need an email address, a username, your first name, your last name. That just helps us as administrators to find you. If there are any queries, you don't necessarily need to do a picture. But yes, you just create your account, and if there's any reason to edit that account, you just simply head to My Account. You can view it and you can edit it should you wish to, if you want to change the name or the email address or anything like that. But yes, as I've just said to Colin, once you've created your account, you're able to log in, navigate the site. You can view that account, as you can see there. You can edit it and make sure. Also, we're going to talk about entering data and creating plots and whatnot, but I would say make sure that you log out once you've completed entering or viewing your data. So I'm really aware of the time, so I'm not going to go too much into this, but of course, in the account edit section, you can change your password. If you need something more memorable, if you've forgotten your password, you just click I forgot my password, just as for many of these various sites. But you'll also see within, this is why I flagged this up, you'll also see within this editing an account, there is the option to put yourself into what's called training mode. You might be able to see it's quite small right down the bottom there. If you decide, do you know what, I want to have a little bit of a play around. I've not used Plant Portal before. I've not done NPMS Plus before. I want to have a little look. I want to have a little go at entering data. I don't want to do anything wrong. Pop it into training mode. You can't break anything then. You pop it into training mode and you have a go, even have a go at entering some data, as we're going to go through in a mo. But it won't store it as, data collected out in the field, official, tracking the impact data. It's just really to give you a chance to have a little bit of a play around should you want to. But the reason I flagged this is, before you then do enter any data that is your survey data for the season, just make sure that you've clicked off that training mode, because any data that you enter in training mode, of course, doesn't then get entered towards the Tracking the Impact project. So it's an absolutely lovely, thing to be able to do, to have a good poke around and not have to worry about, doing anything wrong or entering anything incorrectly. But you do just need to remember to come out of training mode. If I remember rightly, there is a little banner at the top that does remind you that you're in training mode. But yeah, just wanted to say, make sure that you turn that off before you enter any real data that you've collected out in the season. So this is where, for any of you that have done this previously, this is where it looks a little bit different. So just as previously, once you're logged in, you'd head to projects. And whereas Tracking the Impact used to be seen just as a standalone within this menu, it's not anymore. And you simply go to My Projects. That then will take you to a list of any projects you happen to be assigned to. I imagine for a lot of you, I wouldn't want to assume, but a lot of you, your only project will be Tracking the Impact. I've deliberately just shown an example there of 2 that I'm a member of. If you do happen to, I thought it'd be useful just in case, if you happen to be part of 2 projects on the Plant Portal. You see the 2 different ones. You can see Tracking the Impact is down there, down the bottom there. It shows you the name, Tracking the Impact. It tells you a description, NPMS surveys across Central, Chilterns and Chess Valley, coordinated by the Chilterns National Landscape. Yep, that's us. It's been set up. It says by 2025. No, it's not, but that's how long it's been as a NPMS Plus data entry tool. Obviously, it's been going longer than that. But you can see there as well, it shows the type is NPMS. That's the type of survey methodology we're using. It'll tell you that you're a member, how many other members there are, and then there are some other options down the side. And this is really where you're going to be navigating from to do anything really related to your square. There's some additional membership options here, which you can ignore because I'm an administrator, so it shows some additional things. So here's what it should look like for you. Tracking the impact, the description, NPMS, you're a member, how many other members, and then you've got your various project options. They're very much what they say on the tin. There's list squares, there's looking at my samples, and there is enter data. I can see David has just reiterated over there in the chat that everyone that was signed up previously there will now see this. If you go to Plant Portal and you look at my project, you will be able, this is exactly what it will look like for you. There's even people on there that aren't doing it anymore. So yes, you will be directed to a page that looks just like this. And you'll see the different options available to you. So you always need to go to My Projects and then Tracking the Impact to see these project options. So the first one on that list showed list squares. And that really sends you to an option to view all the Tracking the Impact squares. And it gives you a map of their locations. Quite nice to see where all the other squares are. I always find it interesting because I'm wondering, oh, there's a square quite close to mine, or I wonder who's, doing that. So no need to find our site. So Jan, you said, so no need to find our site. Do you mean the NPMS website? There's no need to go to the core National Plant Monitoring Scheme website. You just need to go to the Plant Portal website, which actually, David, would you be able to pop into the chat? That would be helpful.
I wonder whether Jan means no need to your actual plot, your site.
Oh, no, sorry.
Because it's listed there, so you don't have to.
No, you don't. This is just enabling you to take a look at them, really. You don't need to do this initially. This is just if you want to see what other squares are within the area. Yeah. If you know which square that you're allocated to, hopefully you will have sort of arranged this with David. This is a place that you can come to add or edit plots, which I'm going to go through in a moment. You can also view the square as well. You can view a little bit more information about it. So yeah, that's exactly what I've just written there. Oh, I'm terribly sorry. My mouse is double clicking, which is rather annoying. So if we take a look at this example down the bottom here, let's have a look at Backham Warren. I don't know if anybody here has that square. I have clicked on that. It says you have clicked on this square. Would you like to view the plots for this square? So that's something that you can do each time. No, each time I needed to say which is my plot in the previous website. You will when you enter the data, Jan. Yeah, you will when you enter data. You will need to say which square and which plot you're entering data for each time, but not when you very first sort of log in and you want to go and have a look at the square, just when you are actually entering any information. So just to let you know, if you're trying to search for your particular square, obviously it's quite a long list. You can just search for it at the top, maybe putting the first two letters and the first two numbers in, for example, or if you know it better by name, like there's Chalfont Grove there, you can start typing that and that will filter it to help you find your square if you'd like to take a look at that, or if you'd like to add a plot or edit any of the plot information. So in the example here, I think I just clicked on Chalfont, I think was it Grove? Let's call it Grove. It shows you where all the plots are. So you are able to see where other surveyors have their plots as well. It'll show you the plot names. It has, so this one is, for example, has currently got 5 plots associated with it, and you can view these plots. You can opt, as you can see down the bottom, to add a plot or to enter data. That's your first place that you could enter data should you want to. There's a few different ways to enter data. That's one place that you can do so. In this example, you can see that there's only the option to view, not edit the plot. That's why I showed this one, just to make you aware that once you've actually uploaded survey data for a plot, there's a sort of a block on editing it. So that's basically to sort of prevent anybody surveying a plot for, say, 2-3 years, having difficulty accessing that plot. Maybe it's become overgrown, whatever reason you can no longer access that plot, and then going in and editing and updating the location of that plot because you've shifted it a little bit, for example, which is absolutely fine if you need to stop, surveying a certain plot and start another one elsewhere. But in that instance, we'd ask you to create a new plot because, of course, as soon as you edit the plot, it looks like the historical data is also associated with the new information if you edit the plot's location. Of course, it may well be updates. You might think, oh, I don't think I fully recorded this as accurately as I could have, or I could add information about this plot, in which case do let David know. And David and myself can update it as the plot information as administrator. But what I would say is make sure that as far as possible, you can create your plots with as much detail as possible before you enter any data. Because once any data is associated with a plot, you can no longer edit it. You can just view it. When you look at plot examples, so I don't know if there's anybody here. Oh, somebody's put 5 plots listed, but I can only see 3 in the square. That might just be because it's not close up. I can see, if I look very close, I can see there's 2 in the top left-hand corner, 2 in the middle, and 1 in the bottom right-hand corner. They're just quite small on this map. You could probably have a good look and a zoom in if you were looking at this on the website, Andy. So if anybody's, as I say, taking on a square, that happens sometimes where somebody's been surveying and they can't do it anymore. Perhaps they've moved away or they're not able to. So you've adopted, sorry if you can hear my kids on their way to the bath. If you've adopted a square off somebody, I'm sure David will have explained that we do ask you to survey the same plots that were previously surveyed. So again, because we're monitoring change over time. So this is a really good place to come and take a look at some of the information about those plots. So you can see where they are. You can see photographs if the previous recorder took photographs. You can see a sketch. You can see the GPS coordinates, for example. So that's a really good place to go and find out as much information as you can about where those plots are. It's also really handy for yourself, of course. Remind yourself, right, where am I going now? Where's my plot number 3? So do take a look at the details of those plots. Jessica said we haven't been putting pictures in because it takes so long. Others might take over your square, but not essential for the methodology. No, I mean, that's fair enough. If it's taking too long, yeah, as long as if you are able to provide images, if you ever do decide that you're not going to do it, because it is super duper helpful for anybody that might take over. The other benefit can be, but I'm talking on behalf of the core NPMS. We also use images. It's not compulsory, it is an optional thing, but the other reason they can be useful for is to verify habitat type as well. So that was the only other thing, but I don't know if you guys are doing that, David. But yes, it's not compulsory, but super duper helpful. So just an example for anybody who wants to add a plot. So perhaps, yeah, you're new to it this year and you think, right, okay, before I can enter any data, of course, I need to let NPMS Plus or the plant portal here know where I'm assigning that data to. So I actually need to create this sort of digital plot online. Otherwise, we've got this fantastic data and we don't know where it was collected. So in the example here, I've selected Tivoli plots for this Chalfont Grove square again, which we can see, and down the bottom, we are going to opt to add plot. So you select your square from the drop-down list. So you can see the drop-down list at the top. There will be one at the top. You will enter what the plot type is. Is it a linear plot? Is it a square by 5 by 5 plot? Is it a woodland 10 by 10 plot? You then have your plot label, so make sure you label it something you remember. Most people do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or A, B, C, D. You enter the coordinates at the southwest corner, if you have them, please, and provide the additional information like how sloping the plot is, what direction it's facing. And that should then auto, oh golly, I'm still double clicking with this mouse. There we go. You should then see it auto generate the location on a map, so you can kind of take a look. If you don't have the GPS coordinates, I mean, hopefully you might be able to get them off your smartphone, or, you know, we certainly don't expect everybody to have a GPS device, but even if you're able to get them off your smartphone or from an OS map that you take with you, even if you don't, there is a map available on that page, and you can almost sort of zoom in and click, right, I know I was there. And that map's always good to take a look at to double check anyway when you enter your GPS location. And that will auto generate your GPS coordinates as well. There is the option to go into expert mode. Again, that's not compulsory, but that offers you a bit more sort of detail that you can enter to make the position more accurate. But we'll come to that in just a minute. As I say, you name your plot, you give the grid reference to the southwest corner and enter the environmental information. So here's the example with the map. You navigate the map to find your plot location, or you enter the grid reference, and you can re-click and move if it's not correct. So Colin's asking, when you enter new data into a plot, does this then move that plot into the first position on the list? Are plots listed in chronological order or order of having new data entered? No, they tend to be listed in chronological. So if they're listed in whatever order you created them. Really, they tend to be either going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. They won't pop to the top based on when you last entered data. They'll just be in the chronological order. Yeah, it won't be the last one that you entered data. As I said, you can select and grab the tool to grab your square and move it a little bit if it doesn't quite look right. You can double click on any location you want, and that will auto generate the grid reference. Now, the expert mode that I mentioned, doing this just gives you 2 extra functions on the map. So once you've selected, one of them is once you've selected the center of your plot, the square marker will actually be to scale, and you'll see 2 additional circles. The circle in the center of the square allows you to click and drag, which you can't do if you're not in expert mode, so you could just drag it ever so slightly and tweak it. And the second circle actually allows you to click and drag to amend the angle of the square, so you can pivot, as it were, I should say. The other thing for expert mode is it enables you to draw the line of a line transect. So once the line tool is selected, which I've highlighted on the plot there, you can manually sort of click along a feature, a linear feature, whether it's a hedgerow, we can see here, a watercourse or whatnot, to actually click along the route of your linear plot. If you don't do this in expert mode, of course, it just looks like a completely straight line. And then you just double click the line at the end to show that that's the end of your linear plot. You do say to add sketches and descriptions, and then remember to submit. It's helpful for you, it's helpful for others that may well be adopting the square. Yeah, that's all done. Those plots are then associated with the selected square. So in that list that I showed you previously, where it's listed all the squares within the area, if you click on one of those, you'll be able to see the plots that you created. And then you can obviously view details of those and edit them up to the point of entering data. So in the example here, I have selected to view plots for a different square. Oh no, are we still looking at Chalfont Grove? No, we're not. We're not going to do that. We're skipping ahead. I've already done that. That's fine. So we're back to this My Projects page, and we can see here are tracking the impact. I've shown you list squares. I'm actually not going to do the next one because I find it odd that it's slightly odd that it's in this order. I'm going to skip ahead to enter data. Makes more sense to me. We've seen the list of squares. Now we actually want to enter our data. Now, we've just seen that in that example, the Chalfont Grove example, you can see that there is the option to enter data right down the bottom. So if you look at the bottom right-hand side, so you could do it from there, which we saw earlier, but you don't need to do that. You don't need to sort of go to your list of squares, find the square, view the details of that square, and then click to enter data. If you're comfortable, if you're confident, if you know exactly what you're doing, you haven't got loads of time, you've been out, you know which square you're at, you can simply go to My Projects, find Tracking the Impact, and select Enter Data from that point. You're then asked to let us know which survey level you surveyed at, whether that's the wildflower survey level, the indicator, or the inventory level. If there are any questions or any requests for clarifications about the three different survey levels, I'm more than happy to chat about that now. I don't know if you want to do that at all, David, or if you want me to carry on.
Carry on for now.
Carry on for that. If there's time later, we can have a chat about it a bit more, perhaps. So you select which survey level you've surveyed at. So in this example, let's go for wildflower. So I've selected to enter my data, and I have surveyed at the wildflower level. And you'll see that the data entry sort of form is split into three main sections: the location, so where you've been surveying, the survey details, so thinking about the date and these sorts of things, and then the species records themselves. And each section must be completed before moving on to the next. They're very much sort of in an order. You do location first, then your survey details, then your species records. So in terms of the location, you select your square. As we mentioned earlier, Jan, you will click Enter Data, then you say what survey level, then you tell them what square. And then once you have the square, this will give you the drop-down list of the plots associated with that square. So you can see right underneath select a square, there's plot, press the drop-down arrow, and that'll give you a list of whether it's 3, 4, 5 plots that are within that square. You might think, right, well, I'm entering data for my survey on plot 2, so you would select plot 2, for example, and that will auto-generate the spatial reference. You won't need to put that in. You'll see the map down the bottom sort of hones in on the area. But it's good to double check that and just go, oh yes, that is plot 2, because sometimes, you know, human error and whatnot, we might go, yes, I'm doing it for plot 3, and you look at the map and go, that's not what my plot 3 is, and you've, you know, selected the wrong plot, or maybe got the names a bit mixed up. So it's always helpful to have that map there to see it. So once you've done that, you click next step. That takes us on to step 2, survey details. You'll see the location at the top that's auto-filled from your previous page. You then enter the date of the survey. You select, of course, the broad habitat type, and then if you can, the fine scale habitat type too. As you can see from the examples here, I popped in lowland grassland, and then from that I would need to select the fine habitat type. And then you check any management types that you noted or that you know of. And I've put down a little reminder there at the bottom just to say that the online data entry form really replicates all the information that you are recording out in the field. There should be no surprises whatsoever. So continuing on through the survey details, we have the grazing levels, so the grazing pressure, which animals grazing, for example, how wooded is the plot, enter your vegetation height records, all of the same information as you have already recorded out in the field. You're just simply putting it into the web form version. Any additional coverage information, so think about the proportion of the sphere with bare soil, for example, litter and whatnot. You then add a photo if you have one. Again, it's helpful. If you have one, completely understand if there's not enough time. They're quite nice to see. It can show change over time, especially, you know, we've got some recorders that have been doing this for 5 years, 6 years, 10 years even, and it can be really interesting to see differences in the plots over time. And then any other additional comments that you have, that's essentially anything that may have impacted the survey that day. Has it been a particularly, you know, unseasonably warm couple of weeks? Has they actually conversely been really heavy rain for the last however many weeks? Can you notice any damage from, I don't know, from a pest? Anything at all that may impact what you're seeing on the ground. You then click submit, and that takes you to the third and final part of this data entry, which is the species records. And this is the only place really that the records forms differ between the different survey levels. Because I've opted for wildflower level here, we can see that again, it tells you the square, it tells you the plot, and then there's a list. You'll see a list of species underneath this for you to select which of those species you observed and to what level you put in your Domin scale occurrence sort of score. So that's the main difference, is that you can actually see those species there, and those are there because they are the indicator species for the habitat type that you notified, the recording form right at the start, that's the habitat type of that plot. And we're able to put this list here at the wildflower level because of course there are far fewer species that we record at the wildflower level, and we can't do this necessarily in the indicator level or the inventory level, otherwise we'd be getting you chaps to look through a super long list of species names. So yes, they're all in alphabetical order. You can see both Latin and common names. You just leave it blank if you haven't seen the species. If you have seen the species, you enter the Domin scale. The thing to note as well is you might be able to just see there in the middle it says, please select this box if no wildflower species were observed. That's really important because it is possible, it's a real shame, but it is of course possible, and it has happened that somebody's gone to their plot and they've seen plenty of species, but none of them happen to be on the indicator form, on that wildflower indicator list, for example. So it's important to note that, so that we know that actually, yes, the survey is being completed. This survey data entry is complete. It's not been accidentally submitted without entering any data. But again, it's also a reminder for you chaps, even if you don't see the species, or if you only see one or two species on that list, we still need the full sort of survey record entered and the recording form entered, because that absence data is equally important to presence data. So do let us know if nothing was seen. Right. As I say, when you find the species, I just wanted to show what it looks like. Say we found some yarrow, we'll click on that drop down bar and you'll pick the Domin scale, whether it's 1 to 2 individuals, in which case you give it a 1. Happily, it gives you both. It gives you the score and it also gives you the percentage cover. So you can, whichever is your preference of how you've recorded it out in the field, that's what you can enter. You can also see on the right hand side there is the option to add accompanying photos where possible. These can be super helpful if, for example, you've seen a species that aren't that common in that area. Perhaps it's a confusion species, a species that's quite easily confused with another. Not many of those are on the wildflower list, I must admit, but they can be really helpful for verification purposes. So if you are able to upload images, do so. But I appreciate that on a desktop that can take longer. So before you submit, again, this is entirely optional. There is a little box down the bottom for any additional species. So of course, we completely understand that it can be quite frustrating if you're out in the field and you've spotted something else and you can identify it and you want to note that down, both for your records, but also of course the project. You can do, and that's what that space is for. That's the additional species. So that's any other species that you've recorded, you'd like to tell us about, but they're not on that indicator list. So that information is not used in the same way. It's not used for the indicator trends, as it were, but it still can be useful if you do want to let us know. It can be useful for your records so that you're keeping up to date with the different species that you see on that plot, but also it is useful for distribution data, for example. So, knowing where different species are being seen. It's just a case of they're not used in the trends indicator or the indicator trends analysis, but it can be useful. But that's entirely optional if you'd like to have that. That's there because feedback told us that people did want a place to record additional species. So when they're all entered, you simply click submit. You can see there though, just above submit, there is the option to go back to previous steps. If you think, oh gosh, did I enter that correctly or did I miss something? You can always go back to previous steps should you need to. But yes, make sure you press submit, because of course you want to make sure all that wonderful data is captured. Just double check I need a new mouse. So that's the wildflower level. If you are surveying at the indicator level, I'll go through it again, but we'll do it a little bit sort of more quickly, just because the vast majority of it is the same. So we get to our enter data. We are asked to select what survey level. Let's go for indicator this time. So again, exactly the same way, it's split into the three main sections. Again, location, the survey details, and the species records. All the location and the survey details are entered in exactly the same way as we've shown. You put in your square name, your plot location, sort of any environmental and management conditions, habitat type. The only difference is when it comes to the species records. So as I've described previously, there's no species list shown purely because it would be too long. So you're sort of met with first this, please select this box if no indicated species were observed. Fine, we can do that if nothing was seen. But for the indicated species that you have observed, we now need to start entering them in the blank box. We're not going to get you to type out the Latin name of absolutely every indicated species that you have seen. So what you do, you just start to type. You start to type, and you can type either in common or Latin, because of course everybody has their own preference, and it will start to pull up a few suggestions. So quite often you don't tend to get beyond sort of 3, 4, 5 letters, whether you're typing in the common name or the Latin name. It'll show some suggestions, and then you just select it from the list. Once you've selected the species that you were inputting, oh, that was just to show that's the same example, but using the common name. You don't have to tell it whether you're using Latin or common name, you just start typing. Once that's been added, so I've added marsh marigold there, and I've added common nettle there, you look over to abundance, and just as before, you click on the drop down arrow to select the abundance level that you want to record against that species. And again, you've got that option to add any photos. And every time you enter a species, you'll get a new blank box to enter another. So you just keep doing that until all of your species are recorded. And in the same way, you've got the additional species box there, should you wish to. And then you enter, you click the submit button. So that's it. So we've logged in, we've headed to my projects, we found tracking the impact, and we have looked at list squares. We've looked at all of the squares, and we've seen how we enter data. Oh, of course, we've also created some plots within list squares, which is very important. And now we are going to have a little look at my samples, which is the middle box just there. So they're the only 3 options really. So looking at my samples, each time you submit a survey, and of course you do that, you submit a survey in just the same way as I've described, for each survey on each plot, I should say. So for example, if you have 4 plots and you've done them all twice in a year, really speaking, you'll be doing that 8 times. But each time you submit one of these individual surveys, it will be stored in the database, and it will appear in this list of surveys or samples on your My Samples page. If you're in training mode that I mentioned earlier, you'll only see your practice data entry test. But then out of training mode, of course, you'll see the list of real data that you've submitted to the project. Before you've submitted any data, of course, the list will be blank, but you'll see, just like the example that we can see here actually, but as soon as you start entering data, that list will start to populate with surveys. Just like in the example here. As you enter these surveys, they appear on the map. So you can see these little blue dots on the map, and the list as we can see here. And for each survey, you can see its unique survey name, so a long number essentially. You can see the square name, you can see the plot, name and the location. You can see the date that the survey was conducted, and the recorder name, which I've just blurred out there. You can also see on the side there is the ability to edit. So this is if you have entered your data, you've gone back 2 months later, perhaps spotted something and gone, oh gosh, I thought that was a something, and it's actually a something else. Now that I can see the features better, you can edit. You might want to delete a species off there or change it to a different species. You may want to edit it because you might have found out a different management type. You might have been chatting to the landowner, for example, so you want to change the management type. For any reason, really, you might want to edit the survey. So they are open to edit. Once you've popped them in, they are not set in stone. Now, just again, as an example of how the data also looks. So hang on, let me go back to the last page. As you can see at the top, there's a blue tab showing samples. So when you select on My Samples, you can either see them as samples, you can see the list of the individual surveys. But if you select Records, which is next to it, so that's going to turn blue if you can just about see, that actually presents you with a list of absolutely all of the records within those individual surveys. So again, you get the individual ID for the record and the record details. It shows there, I have to look somewhere else because it looks really small. It'll show you the source, so what project you're a part of, the species, the common name, all of the information for every individual record that you have made. You can see there, I think there's a little green P. That means an auto check has been done. So the initial sort of verification check, is this a species that we'd expect to see in this area at this time? It's not a confusion species, for example. So that initial auto verification check has been done. You can see any management type, absolutely all the information associated with each record. And again, there is the option to edit. But this is a place that actually you can download yes, you can edit, I've just said that. If you see down the bottom here, there is the option to download this report. So if ever you should want to, you can download all of the data and it will export in a number of ways that we'll take a look at the moment. That can be really helpful for you to review what you saw last season, what you've been seeing over the last couple of years. It can also be helpful if the landowner's super interested. So yes, you can download your data for whatever reason you may need to. There we go. I think that's it. The other option to do that, if you don't want to kind of go through the projects and my projects and track the impact and my samples or my records, there's a quick way to get to that data download as well, and that's simply to go to projects and data download. That gives you the option to filter the data. So you simply put in the download type, so my records for reporting, a date field, so you can stipulate which date you're interested in, if you just want the 2025 data or if you want the 23 to 25 data. And again, you can give the option of what format you'd want that downloaded. So comma separated CSV is essentially you get an Excel CSV file that'll just show you a big table of all of your records. So yes, that's the other way that you can download your data. I think somebody in the chat previously asked, are you able to download your data? Yes, you are. So I think that's how to navigate everything that you need to navigate, certainly. Hopefully. Everything that I have included in the presentation is also described in the manual that David, I think, has shared with you all, or if not, he will be doing so. I'll also share the slides from today's presentation. So you've got the information in a couple of different formats. As well as that, actually, on the website, you can take a look at resources and training. And within that, there are resources specific for NPMS Plus. And also training for NPMS Plus. NPMS plus being, of course, the way that the methodology that we are using for tracking the impact. So this takes us back almost full circle to what we were discussing before. We've got both resources on there and training. In terms of the online training, that is super handy to take a look back at if you're struggling at all during your data entry. You can see it down the bottom there. It's a course, how to use the plant portal. So that's just navigating around the plant portal, getting yourself signed up with an account, finding your project, sort of more broadly using the website and finding your way around NPMS Plus. And then there's also a how to use the plant portal to enter your NPMS data. And that training is a completely sort of self-led, do it in your own time. You know, you're not listening to me rattling off step-by-step course. So we've got videos on there, we've got click-by-click videos. So you can do each little bit. You can go in and you can see there's a menu down the bottom there. If you're just stuck on one particular thing, you don't have to, you know, sit through the whole thing. You can go and take a look at adding a photo, for example, or editing a plot, or, you know, the various things. So do take a look at that as well. It's my lovely colleague Sarah clicking and talking through each individual aspect of using NPMS Plus, both for using the portal, as I say, and for data entry. Really useful. And the last thing that I wanted to say as well is, of course, there is also now an in-field app, which is super duper handy. So only last year we have developed the core NPMS app to also be a NPMS and plant portal app. And that's free to download. It's available both for Android and for Apple phones. It just requires you to have gone on the desktop to create yourself an account and to be assigned to a project sort of online before you use it as an app. And you also do need to create the plots on the website. You're not able to do that on the app at the moment. So you'll need to go on the site, find your squares, create your plots. But the purpose of the app really is so that you can use it in field to enter that data. So you don't need to take out your paper forms. You can just be out there on site. It essentially replicates the survey recording forms. And you're just doing it once then, because you're doing it in the field. You press submit and it's done, and you don't need to, you know, you don't need to go through the stages at home on the desktop. Everybody has a preference. Some people prefer the recording forms, and then they get a chance to kind of review what they've written, you know, double check some IDs. Yeah, they prefer to do it that way. Maybe folk just don't want another app on their phone. That's totally me. But then equally, some folk, you know, don't want to go back home and enter the data. So it's entirely up to you. There's no preference to us as to which you use, but we wanted to let you know that the app is available. It's a lovely, friendly app. It takes you through. It asks you, of course, are you doing the national or local monitoring scheme? Of course, you're doing a local monitoring scheme. Don't forget to sign up. All these things that you need to do in order to use the app. But when you get to that fourth pane there, you can see it says choose your portal. You'll be using Plant Portal because you're not using core NPMS. The clue there is that there's no plus on there. So you're using Plant Portal. Once you've selected Plant Portal, you're given the option, are you doing the standard survey or the NPMS Plus survey? And as we've been saying today, we are doing an NPMS Plus survey because we are using NPMS survey methodology. And then just as the recording form online, it will ask you your wildflower, in whether you're doing it at the wildflower indicator or inventory level. It will ask you the date that you did the survey, the project. Yours will be tracking the impact, the location. So hang on, let me see if I can see any examples of this. So yeah, so there we go. Again, you can see I'm signed up to 2, so that's why I can see both mine. I can see I've got Lowland Juniper and tracking the impact for you. Likely it will just be tracking the impact for you to select. You will then select the location. So you'll find your square and which plot that you're entering data for. And once you've selected your plot, you just enter all the same information. You enter the broad habitat and then the list of species that you've recorded on that habitat. And you're doing it all out there in the field, just in the same way as you would on the website. You'll then be able to see any pending or uploaded surveys. And it also has the option to see some of those lovely resources on there as well, from the field guidance notes, species lists. All the resources are linked to that app. The other really lovely thing about the app is it will work even if you're out of mobile signal. So you can go out, you can use it. It'll just be a case of when you get back to whether perhaps there's Wi-Fi or where you've got 5G signal or whatnot, you click submit then. So it will hold on to everything that you've collected out in the field. You'll see it as a pending survey, and then you just need to remember to submit it when you're back with signal. So that's been super popular over this last year or so. You can also see your profile down the bottom there. And also there's just a menu to find the resources, as I say, and any sort of resources links like our species lists and whatnot. On the plant portal then, as well as the training, there's also those resources that I've mentioned that are linked via the app. Things like the survey guidance notes. A lot of it is repeated from our core NPMS guidance because, of course, you're using the same survey methodology, but there are some additional NPMS guidance because NPMS Plus, some organisations are using it to monitor additional habitats that we monitor in the core. So, for example, also monitor amenity grassland and brownfield sites. You'll be able to find additional help, additional survey forms for you to print out if you need them, species lists, video resources, all sorts. You can find absolutely all sorts and get lost in those resources. Spend some good time reading through the various resources that are available. And of course, everybody's welcome to use the core NPMS website too. There's a whole host of resources on there, habitat specific resources, ID, plant anatomy resources. It's all publicly freely available on the NPMS website and also the NPMS YouTube channel. There's some really lovely webinar recordings, workshop recordings, how-to guides that are all absolutely relevant to NPMS Plus and the Tracking the Impact project too. Oodles of things on there, a whole raft of things. And that's it really in terms of the how-to. You know, the data is incredibly important. You head out, you create your plots, you carry out the surveys, you input the data. Ideally, we tend to say by the 31st of October, but I don't know if there's a slightly different time frame within Tracking the Impact. So you do that via the plant portal and NPMS Plus, and then we can get down to actually analysing all that fantastic data that is used in a whole host of ways. And that data really helps, but I've just noticed the time, so I'm going to leave it there for now and just to double check if there's any questions before I go on or anything that's been raised in the chat, David.
Nothing, and thank you, Rachel. I think this is going to be one that we sort of play with for a little while and sort of work out what works for us and what doesn't, and sort of answer questions. I've already
Yes, of
identified the
course.
bit that I'm going to forget using the app, but yeah, so we'll just sort of work through it together and sort of
Yeah,
help each other, I think.
it sounds like an awful lot, but I think that's because I've rattled through absolutely every stage in 1 hour. And that's not really, that's not how it's going to go. I think the main thing to say is take your time, step by step, make sure that all your plots are created and all that information's in order, and then that's that box ticked. And you don't need to do it again. That's the other thing to remember. Once you've created your plot, all you're doing each year is the surveying, entering the data.
That's right.
So about 2/3 of what I've just shown you only actually needs to be done once.
Yeah.
The main thing that just needs to be repeated, obviously, is when you actually come to
Yeah.
enter your data.
And
And the
just
other thing to say is we're of course more than happy to help.
yeah, thank you, Rachel. That's really appreciated. And just a sort of reminder there for people, one of the things that it does is knows to take you sort of to that specific plot, so you don't have to keep putting that in. You get constrained to your survey level. So the number of species that you have to worry about is is fairly limited. So if you're new and you're daunted by it, you think, oh, I've got to learn every plant I'm ever going to find in your square. It isn't, and we can talk you through that.
No, no, not at all. And that's why I kind of highlighted it at the time. Even if you're super duper confident with, your species ID, sometimes it can be helpful to do it at the wildflower indicator surveys. You're sort of getting to grips with the methodology and the data entry just to kind of find your way about and suss out how it goes. And then the next year, maybe you might move up to a higher level. But we're very much interested in what species from the indicator list were or weren't there, because those are selected because they're really good indicators, as the name would suggest, of habitat health. They've been selected as species that are relatively common, frequently occurring, easily identifiable, but they are also really good at telling us how healthy that habitat is.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rachel. Does anyone have any questions before we let everyone go? Thank you very much, everyone, for coming. It's brilliant. Your enthusiasm is great, especially in the evening. I'm gonna stop the recording now, and